G'day everybody, I'm so sorry to jump into the video, but there is some exciting news that I thought was worth sharing at this point right now. Firstly, it's firmware version 1.10 for the Z9. Now this is just a little firmware update that perhaps doesn't impact everybody, but it just shows us that Nikon are going to continue to give us little advancements and big advancements as they come. And of course in 2022 we know about the 8K 60 frames per second RAW update coming. I'm really excited about what Nikon's engineers are going to be able to do over the coming years with the Z9. I think it's an amazing piece of hardware which has a great deal of expandability. Fingers crossed. Big updates, little updates. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of updates. And in more exciting news, yes, some NPS members around the United States are starting to receive letters that their Z9s will be arriving at their retailer of choice. Now this is super exciting news considering we had some recent headlines or fake news that there wouldn't be any more units shipping until September 2022. Now, I don't know, are these websites, are these YouTubers, are these people ever going to stop with the fake news around Nikon? There's just been so much of it over the last couple of years. And I would think maybe it's time for you to lean somewhere else or maybe find a different way of getting clicks. I don't know, it's just a thought. There we have it. So if you are one of those lucky NPS members and your Z9 is arriving this week, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. And in final news, yes, DP Review, they have held a readers poll for the product of the year. And I'm excited to say that the Z9 won, but not only did it win, but it won convincingly. Yes, it received over 53% of the vote for winner, with the Sony A1 coming second, coming runner-up, only receiving 26% of the vote. This is super exciting stuff. Obviously, the DP Review is a global website, but not only is it a global website, but it obviously attracts every single camera brand user, all of them from all around the world. So the fact that the Nikon Z9 managed to garner over 50% of the entire vote, well, I think that sends a very strong signal to the world. This is a convincing victory when you more than double the vote of your nearest competitor, and your competitor is the mighty Sony and the mighty Sony A1. Anyway, that's it for this little news break, news flash. I'll see you soon. G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope you are super well. Well, yes indeed, we have winter in summer. Let's talk about the Z9 and let's talk about setting expectations. This is a brave new world. It's a brave new world for Nikon, having to deal with the challenges of going with a stacked sensor, which means there's new technologies, and then removing the shutter. I also believe that makes some fundamental differences as well, not having the mechanical closing, a surface closing, a shutter closing, just like you have a shutter on a window. That physical barrier is not there anymore. The sensor is constantly exposed to the light coming through the lens. It is never covered. It is never covered except when, if you choose to turn it on, you put the sensor cover down. This creates new challenges, and I would suspect the challenges are everywhere. Of course, stacked BSI technology is not brand new, and what we're getting here in the A1 and the Z9 is high megapixels. much higher pixel counts with backside illuminated stack sensors. Also in the R3, but it has the lower pixel count. So what does this all mean? It means everything's new, and that means everything's new for Nikon, but it also means everything is new for us. I really appreciate all the enthusiasm in the comments, but there's a lot to learn here. And what I found, I want to share with you a little bit of my journey of the image from when I first started with a Pentax 35mm. Looked for more quality, got myself a Mamiya RB67. Also looked for more quality by getting Agfa 25 ISO film. 25, super fine grain, medium format film. Then the very first digital cameras that I was privy to, 1.7 megapixels. Obviously that wasn't going to get us anywhere. And the first real camera that I sort of thought, well, it's getting close, it's close enough to start using it for real, was the Nikon D70. I think that was 2004. But then it was really the Nikon D3 in 2007. This was the first time to me that a digital camera didn't really look like a digital. Nikon did something magical with the grain and the color to kind of make it feel filmic, but it also gave us the full 35mm experience. So then the journey was on. How could digital continue to improve upon itself? Now back then we were talking 12 megapixels. We now almost have 4 times the megapixel count in, say, a Z9 like we're shooting with here, a Z7, Z7 II, and so on. Yet the quality has continued. But all the way through that journey, from the D70, the D3, the D4, the D800E in my case, the D810, the D850, there's always been little changes, little quirks, little things that we've had to think about. For example, I didn't really think the color science and the magic was there, as I said, with the D70. Then it arrived with the D3. Then I was pretty happy going from a D3 to a D4, a D800, a D810. But then I think something happened from the D810 to the D850. I think this is the first time we had a BSI sensor inside a Nikon camera. It took me quite a long time to massage my files to the point where they were in keeping with the rest of my catalogue, which at that point in time was almost 30 years old. I've got a look, a style, a vibe, and I'm always trying to keep it somewhere in the ballpark. Because I publish books and they span decades, you want to keep the vibe similar. It's impossible to keep it the same. So what I've found is, as technology changes, as the baseline, the underlying technologies change, you know, we went from CCD to CMOS, that changed things. We went from CMOS to backside illuminated, and that changed things. And now we're going from backside illuminated to backside illuminated and stacked and shutterless. And we have to keep evolving. And it definitely means that things are not the same. And we need to be okay with that. We need to be okay with that. Now, today I'm shooting in 4K on the Z9, just at 24. And I've got auto exposure happening. So whatever the shutters, whatever the apertures, whatever the ISOs, that's not what today's video is about. Well, we're in crazy wind. The D850, it meant change. It meant massaging my files to get them to the same standard, as close as I could to all the other files over the last previous almost 30 years. And that's a challenge because technology keeps changing. The way everybody is doing things keeps changing. These changes change the way cameras collect images. There are so many factors, and I suspect there's so many factors that the majority of us know absolutely nothing about. And here we are. We're just 2 weeks into the Z9 being officially in the wild. There is so much to learn about this camera. And as I talked about from the start, the thing that I was most interested in personally was 8K. I've used 45 megapixels for the last 4 years. So that's not a big deal to me. And super duper focus, speeds and acquisitions, the Z6 and the Z7 with their latest updates, and the Z6 II and the Z7 II, etc., the ZFC, the Z50, they actually all do a really, really good job. You know, I shot a gig just before Christmas. It was an event of this awesome medical company that I do lots of portraiture and marketing ideas and so on with them, but they had their annual event. And I used a Z6 and a Z6 II, and they performed stunningly in a low light situation. So here we are, we now have this process of this bleeding edge technology. This is probably the single biggest step that Nikon has ever taken in this space. And we've now got to understand, as photographic practitioners, as artists, as crafts people, how do we mold this latest technology to suit our needs? And all of our needs are different. Some of us do sports, some of us do portraiture, some of us do wildlife, some of us do cityscapes and landscapes, and so on. Macro, whatever. There are so many versions. And for me, it's going to take me time. It's going to take me time to get through all of it, because the first thing for me is about just understanding the scope, right? Understanding the scope, what's the questions that we're asking, and doing it within my framework, what I understand. There's no point doing it outside of the things that I understand. The journey is going to be different. And not only is the journey going to be different for me, but it's going to be different for all of us. Some people might just simply be saying, the AF is ridiculous and I love it and I'm getting great images and that's all I care about. Some people might say the 8K in a body that shoots for over 2 hours and then you can just hit record again and you can just keep going again. Some people might be interested in absolute picture quality, absolute dynamic range, absolute high ISO. We're all different. And maybe what we'll find moving into the future with this camera, that it sits at a spot in the market, just like the D1, D2, D3, D4, D5 and D6 before it. Those were cameras aimed at high ISO, high speed, ruggedness. I can take on anything. Well, remember that that is what this camera is replacing. It's replacing a D5, a D6. Yet you're getting twice the pixel count, more than twice the pixel count. So when you think about this camera, think about it in the context of what it's replacing. Think about it in the context that we will have a Z7 III, surely. We probably will have a Z8. It's getting too windy here. I think I'll try and find somewhere a little bit more sheltered. Well, it's been crazy weather down here at the beach. It is summertime, supposed to be. Not really very summery today, and not for the next 3 days while we're down here. Normal programming will resume soon. What I want to say about the Z9 is this though. It's not a D850, it's not a D5 or a D6, it's not a D500. It's a little bit of a hybrid of all of them. But clearly, by its form factor, its price point, and its immense speed, it's more aimed at the D5, the D6 sector. It's the flagship. That's what the flagships have done. And that's what they've done for a long time. So when it comes to what a D5 or a D6 does, the Z9 knocks it out at the park. Not only do we have BSI and stacked and an electronic shutter, but we also have the deep learning that's come around the AF system. And now that I've been using the AF system for, something like 2 weeks, I can see there's a lot of stuff in there that we're still yet to discover. It's finding things that I just simply thought it wouldn't find. It's an extraordinary system. And the millions and millions of pictures and instances and all the refining they do with deep learning, well, it could take a very long time for us to really discover how good it is. But it's picking up cars, it's picking up birds, it's picking up all sorts of things that I just go, wow. And I'm also finding they are way, way off in the distance, and it's finding them. There's an extraordinarily huge amount of new technology in this camera that really allows it to be the best D5 or D6 that we've ever seen. And is the Z9, the camera we're shooting on right now, is it a D850? Well, no, not really. It's not supposed to be. It's not at the price point. And from my perspective, we've got cameras very, very close, if not the same as, if not better than, the D850 in the Z7 and the Z7 II. Now, some people will complain about focus, because that seems to be the thing that most people complain about. And, well, considering the advancements we've seen in the Z6 and the Z7 with the latest firmware updates, you know, I believe, I do think that we will have more coming, and I do think that AF will improve in that space. So Nikon have provided that camera, and there's just a bit of more firmware tweaking, but I believe the D850 replacement pretty much already exists. Now, if you don't, you can wait until the Z7 III. I'm sure that's coming somewhere down the line, or maybe it's the Z8. We don't really know at this point. But either way, the Z9 is not and was not ever supposed to be that camera. It is clearly the flagship. It's clearly the high-speed beast. 20 frames per second in RAW, and I think there's a chance that might increase. 30 frames per second in JPEG full frame, 120 frames per second full frame in 11 megapixels. It is a speed demon, but I think what they've done here is given us the D500 and the D5/D6 in the one body. So I know we all get super excited when a new camera is released, and our expectations go through the roof, and we're so excited, and there's all this new technology. But at the end of the day, we are being given here a camera that does so many things. And if your use case fits this camera, it's outstanding. But if you want to just do landscapes, well, why the hell buy this camera? Why do you want to buy it when a Z7 is ridiculously cheap now and does the job? You don't need a vertical grip. You don't need the battery life. You don't need the crazy autofocus. And you don't need the 8K. So, I don't know, it all makes sense to me. And the notion that you're going to get absolutely the best of every single metric of every single camera in one body, I don't think that's ever happened, and I don't think it will ever happen. You've got to trade off something for something. And in this case, we have ridiculous speed. And it was the same with the D5 and the D6. Ridiculous speed, but without ridiculous resolution. Here we actually get ridiculous speed and, well, good resolution. 45 megapixels is a lot. Set your expectations. We've still got a long journey to go with this camera. There's still so much to learn. As I said, understanding the deep learning that's gone behind the AF system, I still think there's a lot to go there. And for me, processing files, it's going to take me a number of months to work out how to optimize the processing of raw files. We still can't do a high efficiency RAW, high efficiency star in my software of choice, Capture One. And, you know, I'm not familiar and I'm not used to using the Nikon software to get my results. So everybody, chill. There's great cameras around us. If you're a speed demon, this camera won't let you down. If you want to shoot 8K, well, I'm already very excited by the 8K and the price point that 8K comes at. Then when you couple it with all of the amazing Nikon glass, and I think next year, now that this flagship is out of the way, we will see further increases and further iterations into areas that perhaps you are interested in. Might be a Z7 III, which gives you even more resolution and perhaps increased autofocus. So the camera becomes sort of a hybrid between a D850, a Z7 II, and a Z9. I think that's potentially coming in the next year or two. So that's it, everybody. Set your expectations. No one camera is going to knock every metric out of the park. I'm interested in seeing the fact that already we're getting people criticizing this camera, yet they don't talk about the areas where it excels. Why are we continuing to see this? Because this camera does excel. I'll leave it with you. I'll leave you to let me know in the comments below. Do you really think one camera should be better than all cameras in every metric? Do you think that? I don't think it. My expectations would never be that high. You're just setting yourself up for disappointment. It is so good to see you. And if this is your first time here, I would love to see you again, so please do subscribe, please share, and please like. and enjoy winter in summer. It's great. And we're actually shooting on the Z9. I am vlogging on the Z9 right here, right now. I've got slow focus transition happening, so that's why it's slow, and that's cool. And I'm using the 24 to 72.8. Why not? And I'm holding this thing at arm's length on a little carbon fiber tripod, so it gets pretty heavy pretty quickly, but I think it looks good. And this weather here, well, it's pretty nuts. It's pretty nuts. But let's just talk about the Z9. You know, what do we know about the Z9? Well, it's got a new sensor. And for the first time ever, Nikon are using a BSI stacked sensor. But for the first time ever, there's no mechanical shutter. And this changes a lot of things at once.